Hi everyone, thanks for clicking in and listening to this week's edition of the Sustainable Cannabis Coalition podcast. As you know by now, our podcasts are a series of roundtable discussions with industry luminaries who are tackling trends and who are focused on sustainable practices within the fast-growing cannabis industry. I'm your host, Dana Hillman, VP of Business Development for Grow IQ. For this episode, we'll be talking sustainability in the context of the cannabis industry and more specifically, the controlled environment agriculture space, with one of the founding members of the SCC, Shawn Cooney of CloudFarming, and his special guest, Eric Levesque at Cultivatd. Shawn actually operates several controlled environment ag facilities in the heart of Boston, and Eric is the co-founder of Cultivatd. They're an indoor farming brokerage that helps connect people and businesses who want to get into the fast-growing indoor farming industry. Eric and Shawn, thanks so much for being here today. Really appreciate your time.
Hey, you're welcome. To be here.
Me too. So, Shawn, when we're talking about controlled environment agriculture, you've actually put your money where your mouth is and are a true believer in controlled environment ag. And I've had the pleasure of actually touring your facilities. And Eric, I know you've been in the controlled ag space for years. You've probably forgotten more that most will know. So it's really great to have you here. It's certainly going to be meaningful. So as always, I'll shut up, but I'd love to give you guys, at least our listeners, some context. So if you go around the horn and maybe Shawn, start with yourself, and then Eric, for a little background on yourself and how you got into the business would be great.
Sure. Thanks, Dana. Well, let's see. I've got about a 25-year background in venture-funded tech, developing encryption technology, data compression for audio and video, and network storage, and starting 3 companies based on those technologies. And basically developed a new technology for virtualizing networks. This is my last adventure. Technology that eventually became software-defined networking.
Oh, yeah.
And so after we sold the last one, I was kicking around a bunch of back-of-the-envelope business plans, and controlled environment agriculture kept coming up as something that could be bootstrapped and also interesting. So we stepped away from venture land and set out to do a CEA grow in Boston. And so we ended up, setting up a facility, learning how to grow correctly, and the software and the technology and even the hard work that went into that. Developed a retail delivery and wholesale business, and basically built a brand and as a premium lettuce and greens for consumers and restaurants in the Boston area. So the next step, basically about 2.5 years ago, was to take that anchor product of lettuce and greens and add a cash crop to it. And the environments we're using weren't amenable to the traditional strawberries or that kind of thing, year-round strawberry access. And cannabis was opening up in the Massachusetts area where we are, and decided that would be the appropriate cash crop to sort of put our expertise and our space to use for, and so started doing all the work behind that to understand some of the differences between greens and cannabis, the requirements, and getting the a cash crop going in the Boston area. So that's where we are right now. We're adding to a farm as opposed to doing a pivot and getting out of one and into another. So we're growing a business as opposed to jumping ship and trying to turn the whole thing into a cannabis business.
Literally growing a business. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Well, Eric, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm fascinated to hear about Eric too, because I know he's been in the space. I think you've worked with each other, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I've been in the space a little less long. I started about 3.5 to 4 years ago when I came on board as the head of sales for ZipGrow Inc., which is a manufacturer and distributor of hydroponic systems. We do a full turnkey system there. I came onto the company when it was brand new. We were just 2 employees, but we grew it relatively quickly to about 25 employees in the first 18 months or so.
Yeah.
I left that business about 1 year ago to found Cultivatd, which is the first indoor ag brokership, where we've partnered with about 40 of the best technology providers in the space, from hobbyists all the way up to large commercial grows, whether it be just traditional ag, indoor ag, or cannabis. And so
Hmm.
we're really looking to break that barrier to entry, where we see that a lot of people trying to get into this industry, unfortunately, are having a hard time coming up with the knowledge. And so my partner and I have kind of tried to bridge that by educating them for free. And then we basically just ask you what your goals are and then point you in the right direction towards one of our partners.
Very cool. Very cool. And I know a lot of your experience has definitely been in the vegetable leafy green market too, which is kind of interesting and a nice crossover with cannabis, especially in controlled environment ag. So that's great.
Yeah. And
Um,
go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I say, yeah, in the beginning, we started mostly with just veggies, but it moved
Hmm.
towards cannabis. Obviously, it was legalized in Canada not too long ago, and seems to be more legalization every day, or moving towards that direction in the U.S. So we saw, an opportunity that couldn't be ignored there. So we have sold and installed some cannabis farms as well, and we're seeing more interest by the day.
That's great. Okay, so
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you. I have this big question for you guys, both of you. So when you're talking about controlled environment ag in the context of sustainability, I certainly understand that growing outdoors, you're at the mercy of the gods, but is controlled environment ag really sustainable or not? What are your views on that?
Obviously, both have their advantages. Um, Moving indoors, like you said, you can, control everything from the water to the light cycle, the nutrients. You're not at the mercy of what may happen outdoors. You're also getting an extreme efficiency in terms of space. So you can grow, multiple acres in just maybe 1,000 or 2,000 square feet. And you're really tailoring the system so that you're giving every plant the perfect amount of nutrients, perfect amount of light, perfect amount of humidity, so that you're getting a perfect genetic and a perfect end result every single time. Whereas you're kind of, at the mercy of Mother Nature when you're outdoors.
Absolutely. I mean, Shawn,
Yeah.
you've been doing it actually. So what
Yeah.
are your thoughts?
Well, I know it's basically a question of being able to grow a product that differentiates itself from what's currently available in the commodity market. You have to be able to, especially initially, have a better product that you can charge what it costs to grow. Um, and that's key, and I think that's where it relates back to cannabis, is that cannabis prices are falling. There's a lot of indoor grows that have sort of unsustainable cost structures, and but looking at the greens market, it is possible to build your cost structure and to sell something that doesn't cost $4,000 a pound. Um, and you just have to be careful, and you have to sort of look at what you're doing and how you're doing it a little bit differently. And there's a lot of experience in the ag market growing inexpensive things that can be transferred, I think, into the cannabis market, and in the end make it more sustainable. But sustainability is also a business proposition. If consumers want your product, that's great, as long as you can charge them a reasonable amount for it. You just don't want to be stuck in a race to the bottom.
Yeah, and that seems like it's where a lot of cannabis producers have found themselves. Let me ask you something. Do you think that's a function of trying to keep the cost down up front and then suffering at the hands of inefficiencies down the road? Long game versus short game.
Yeah, and but I think it was driven by the price. That you didn't have to be careful. You didn't have to be careful with every penny, so you could be a little bit sloppy with your the way you designed and what you bought and the way you operate. So yeah, it was the short game of let's just get in and do it, and design everything from scratch. There's a lot of one-off projects in the cannabis space. Every project seems to be a one-off project. Where if you look at the CEA space in ag, there are companies like Eric's and the companies that supply make the products that Eric brokers, that Cultivatd brokers, that are taking all of the 50 or so years of CEA experience and building sophisticated custom products that can go all the way through complete automation, and genetics that are designed for those products, and as opposed to a one-off product.
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
Well, and it's interesting because, like I said, Shawn, I've seen your facility, which is really cool, I must say. But people grow in different ways, right? You can grow horizontally, or you can grow stacked horizontal, or like in your case, you actually grow vertical, where the plants are out of a soil repository that are truly stacked at 90 degrees. So in general, maybe give me an idea what the pros and cons of each are, and maybe is there one more sustainable than the other? And Eric, if you've got something to add on that, I know that's out of left field, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah,
go for it, Eric. you got them all lined up there.
Yeah,
Cultivatd.
Every system is going to have its ups and its downs, so it's really going to depend on what you're looking to accomplish. That's kind of why we got into this business, right? We were getting customers at my last business, and we were having to turn them away because the product was niche and not capable of satisfying everyone's needs. And so we figured if we can partner with all of these companies, we'll be able to offer a complete solution regardless of what the consumer's end goal is. So there obviously are advantages to growing vertically like Shawn is doing now, which is the exact same system as my last business was operating as. There are advantages to growing in stacked trays. It really depends on what you're looking to grow and what you're looking to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know cannabis it's a bigger plant, right? Certainly than, say, most of the leafy greens. So Shawn, I mean, what have you seen? I know you're certainly vertical, but have you planned on doing anything else? Or are you going to stick with that?
Initially, because this is the sort of bootstrap business. All of our testing cycles have been done using the existing vertical type system that we're using, and it does function. And you just have, what you have to do is take into account the system you're using, and look for genetics that are a little bit smaller, that aren't necessarily photo period. Plant slightly differently, but basically, you don't want to go in with preconceived notions. It's even the lettuce I grow is specifically designed for hydroponic applications.
Okay, cool.
It's a different lettuce than what you grow in a field. And I think the same thing is going to end up powering the long-term success of the cannabis industry. It's like growing what you should, and also educating your consumers as to why what you're doing does work. It is sustainable. It is a better product, and staying out of the commodity business. Because the cannabis business is, even though there's a lot of dollars in it, physically, there's not many cannabis farms. They don't take up much space. They're small. They don't sell a lot of product. and they both the both industries need to learn from each other, and and economies of scale and economy in design is one of the things that the cannabis business can take and learn from large scale agricultural grows.
Absolutely. So I'm going to geek out for a second here too, because I've known guys that grow in small environments, and they were able to really densely pack those. I think it were containers at one point. But once you have that much plant material in there, and let's face it, I mean, plants have to breathe and they kick out a lot of water. So it seems like that's going to impact pretty much every other system you've got, like HVAC, dehues, things like that. I mean, Eric, and both you, Shawn too, maybe give me your thoughts on that. I mean, does that drive your costs up on one side, or can you make the economics work out?
Yeah, it's definitely going to drive the cost up in a sense. It's a pretty complex plant, so obviously it's going to respire a lot. There's a lot of water involved in these systems. We actually installed a system similar to Shawn's in Switzerland for CBD production. Mm-hmm. It was approximately 2,000 square feet of growing space, maybe a bit less, and they were growing 10,600 plants at a time.
Oh God, that's a lot.
So really efficient, but we were growing ruderalis strains. I'm not sure if that's what you were growing as well, Shawn. I don't remember when we visited yours, but
yes.
So just a smaller, exactly.
That was what I focused on.
Plant, which has its advantages and disadvantages. Obviously, it being smaller, we had some nice bigger colas, and it was a lot more efficient for the system to manage. But it had disadvantages. Ruderalis strains can't be cloned, so every time that you harvest, you have to start again from seed. Which is kind of a disadvantage, but it was working really well.
Yeah.
And I think that's the clone thing is actually, I mean, I'm not so sure it's a bad thing, because I think a lot of cannabis grows waste a lot of physical space on taking care of mother plants and growing clones, and spending a lot of energy. Sometimes up to a third of their space doing that, lighting it, heating it, cooling it, and where light, heat, and cool is half of their cost. If you're using that for 30% of your facility, it may not be a good thing. And I think the problem is homemade genetics. That the genetics in marijuana do what they're supposed to do. I mean, they produce a lot of THC, they produce a lot of terpenes. It's an interesting genetic, but it may not be the long-term sustainable answer. It may be better genetics that are better suited to the environments you're growing in. In the triangle, you can grow great big outdoor plants. That's great. And some grows will be in greenhouses with medium-sized plants. But just packing them in with the wrong genetics may not be the right answer.
So it sounds like there's more to just sustainability than how much plant matter you can get in a small facility, and then the dehu HVAC. Wow.
Right. I mean, basically, you're in the labor in order to make that physically work. Packing those plants in there means that someone's got to bottom trim it, keep them clean. There's another layer in there where normally plants come with a planting distance. You plant your hemp plants 5 feet apart outdoors. You plant your lettuce so many inches apart. You plant carrots so many inches apart. And the only reason people plant cannabis that close together is because they feel limited and they want to, exact the most cannabis. And it may not be actually doing that.
So, okay, this is an interesting, like I said, this is just me geeking out. What's the biggest input cost that you have? Is it electricity? I mean, what, in terms of sustainability, is water an issue? How do you control these things? How do you address it?
Usually your lighting costs are going to be approximately 35 to 40% of your operational expense. And then your HVAC is probably going to be the other major factor there, other than labor. Water usually for CEA is not an issue. You're usually looking at saving between 90 to 99%, depending on the system of the water you'd use on a traditional outdoor grow.
Wow, wait a minute. So repeat that back to me. You said saving 90% of the
Yeah,
water?
so in most indoor grows, you can save up to, depending on the system, 90+% of the water that you would be using on a traditional outdoor grow.
Is that because you're taking the water from plant transpiration and then putting it back into the system or
Yeah,
capturing it or
most
what?
most systems, you're recapturing everything that you can, and everything is being cycled
Huh?
back into the tanks. So even what you dehumidify will be pumped back into the tanks, and then more nutrients will be added. All of that is dosed automatically with computers and stuff. So it's a pretty cool system, and everything obviously is trying to get towards as net zero as you can.
Wow, that is cool. I mean, Shawn, is that what you're seeing too? I mean,
Yeah. Oh yeah, that is the
wow.
truth. That is the truth. And because a lot of the cannabis grows, the indoor cannabis grows and CEA environments are in
Mhm.
urban areas, you're getting to use basically city water, for
Yeah.
lack of a better term. And you can basically go to your in Boston, for instance. I can go to the Mass Water Resources Authority, and any day, anytime, and get a printout of what the quality of my water is, that I'm adding to my system. You know, whether there's any
Hmm.
heavy metals in it, whether there's anything, and there's always nothing, because that's their job. Um, there may be a little. They do put chlorine in, and you can filter that if you want. But that's a good thing to be able to say, what your water is, because especially with cannabis, where a lot of it is being smoked, you can't have
Right.
heavy metals in
Yeah.
it. It's a
There's
it's
a
not
technical
a good
term
thing.
for it. It's called not good. So-
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So that's so and being able to, and it granted it does cost money to get that water, but since we're not using very much of it, I think it's sort of money well
Now,
spent.
here's another question. It was interesting because one of our other SCC members, that focuses on SOPs and then GMP processes. It sounds like when you're doing a true controlled ag system, like Eric, like the products that you represent, or Shawn, what you're doing, when you go to get licensed, it seems like they're probably going to look, or at least the municipalities will look a little bit more favorably on that. Is that fair to say?
We haven't really had any issues getting any type of licensing, so I would say that's pretty fair. Um, Generally, the licensing comes through really quickly, and it's not. I guess I don't have too much experience with the grows in the U.S., but Canadian-wise, at least, what
Hmm.
we've seen has been really simple.
Right, and from just my personal experience, the inspectional services, for both the farm and moving forward in the cannabis business, um, look at this as a product. What I'm using is a product. I'm using a Chevrolet. I'm not building a one-off conglomeration of parts that needs everything um, sussed out and over inspected. So I think I agree with Eric. They look at it slightly differently. That someone spent some time building this, designing it, and making sure it's safe and functional.
Yeah, and that you actually can adhere to the power requirements, water requirements, things like that, and no, you can out of the
Yeah,
well, literally out of the box.
out of the box.
So it was
Yeah.
also interesting too. I was talking to another SCC member about lighting, and I know most, and I don't think I'm going on a limb here, but most controlled environment ag in a small area are going to be using LEDs versus HID systems. Heats,
They
yeah,
they should be.
they're not. They're just heating a box. But give me an idea, because I've seen yours. It looked like it was a curtain of lights, which was really cool. But Help me understand maybe the best type of lighting and what you found as far as lighting in your control environment.
I'll do the personal. Eric, you please do the general range of responses. But personally, I found that we're able to keep the lighting very close to the canopy. We're able to look at lighting cycles to maximize the growth to what we're looking for. And the reason it's just vertical is that's since the plants are oriented that way, that's just makes more sense for getting at them and working on them. It is LED. It should be. And one benefit of the sort of vertical system that I'm using is that you get basically the effect of interlighting.
Maybe unpack that a little bit.
So we're geeking out a little bit again. Yeah, we're geeking out a little bit. It's a term that comes from growing tomatoes and cucumbers, which are vines and grow very tall. And the ag industry was looking at the production and the quality and finding that it wasn't quite what they wanted. So they started deploying lights vertically along the length of the vines, interlighting between the rows. But what that does is you're growing a plant along the length of the plant. So applying that to sort of cannabis, you get a plant instead of with all of the colas and all of the leaves and everything on the top, sort of looking like a flattened mushroom. You get a plant that looks like it would when it grows outside. You can grow it that way, and then the plant gets light around almost about 80% of its surface area, and it grows more like a little Christmas tree. That is the way a cannabis plant really grows. So that's the personal experience, but that doesn't mean that you have to do it that way. And there's a range of other ways that we can do it. Eric, so what do you generally sort of?
We recommend LEDs
in your scene
for all grows. Some older traditional growers still like to use HPS lights, but I think they're finally kind of coming around. LEDs have made great strides in the last decade or so. We work with a ton of companies, and most of them now can offer a full spectrum light with far red and infrared and UV. And a lot of the lights now are customizable as well, so you can change the spectrum based on what kind of state your plant is in, whether it's vegetating or flowering. And then obviously the PPFDs and the U moles, we can customize those as well, so you can have less or more depending on what stage your plant is in. And then obviously you can have them, as close or as far as need be, depending on how your plant is growing. So usually we see somewhere between 8 and 24 inches, depending on the grow, depending on the equipment, depending on the light. And then we usually look for a PPFD of at least 700 U moles to be sure that the plant can flower properly. But LED is definitely the way to go.
Well, that's cool. It's funny. I was talking, like I said, the other lighting guys, and it seemed like, or it certainly seems like over the last year and a half, 2 years, they've made really big strides in lighting and moved away from, I guess, what they used to call the old blurple lights, where it was limited spectrum and unable to kind of mimic outdoor light. So it seems like that's really cool. And Shawn, I've seen yours, and your plants certainly look healthy.
Yeah, no, and I think again, one of the key things Eric brought up is that you're able to dial the intensity and even the color and the effect of the lights to what the plant needs. So you're not stuck with a one size fits all option. So when you can save energy because it's early in the veg cycle, or when you're whatever, you can dial that. You can use the smarts and the data you get and the computer control that you have to do things that would be damn near impossible unless you had someone sitting in your grow all day every day playing at light volume. So the systems are there to understand the lighting, and the current controls are there to control it, and the lights are able to respond to that. And in the end, that's part of how you sort of become as sustainable as you can with your energy outputs.
Yeah, and to kind of wrap up, I mean, it sounds, I heard some really interesting points, other than the fact that I guess in my mind, if you're growing locally, whether it's cannabis or leafy greens or vegetables, yeah, probably less environmentally impactful in a negative way than having a bunch of vegetables stuck on a big boat somewhere coming from South America. But also, Eric, what you mentioned was just stunning to me, the ability to cut water consumption by up to 90%. That's crazy. So it does sound like, contrary to what I initially thought, when you're talking about controlled environment agriculture, you really can become more sustainable.
Yeah, we're looking to become more sustainable every day. So the farms are becoming more and more automated, and we're trying to obviously go as close to net zero as is humanly possible. That's kind of the goal here, right? So obviously the
That's kind of exciting, yeah.
is set to grow by 50% in the next 50 years or so, or by 2050. And for that, we have to grow 100% more food, and we have no arable land, and there's quite a few water shortages, obviously, in some places like South Africa and California, where it's really a big issue right now. So this addresses all of those problems, and that's kind of what we're looking to solve right now. So these farms obviously are getting smarter every day. Everything is automatic almost in terms of the dosing and the light cycles, and we pump CO2 in there so that the plants can absorb it and grow faster. So we're really looking to kind of take the human equation out of there and deliver a perfect product every time.
Yeah, that's exciting. And Shawn, I know you're on the front lines of this. Right. You're eating, sleeping, drinking it, breathing it every day. So
yeah, good thing we're not on video. You could see the inside of the.
Well, look, guys, I could talk to you all day because I just find this fascinating. But thanks again, Eric and Shawn, for stepping in and away from your day jobs to share a little bit about the controlled environment ag world and its place in sustainability. Thanks for tuning in to this week's Sustainable Cannabis Coalition podcast. We certainly hope you enjoyed it. Again, you've been listening to one of our founding members, Shawn Cooney of CloudFarming, and his guest, Eric Levesque, co-founder of Cultivatd. For more information on CloudFarming, you can find them on the web at cloudfarming.net. And that's spelled the way it sounds, CloudFarming, all one word, .net. Now, if you have an interest in getting involved in the fast-growing sector of controlled environment farming, Eric's the guy to talk to, Cultivatd. You can find them on the web at cultivatd.com. Now, this is a unique spelling. It's cultivatd.com. That's spelled cultivated minus the E. I'm your host, Dana Hillman, with Grow IQ, and I look forward to speaking with you on our next Sustainable Cannabis Coalition podcast. Until then, be well.